I'm not sure why that happened. That's never happened before. And this is the 75th podcast, but
Nice.
welcome anyway. So this is the EricSwannRacing.com podcast number 75 with Jayson Uribe. This is the second time you've been on, so thanks for coming back and talking to me, getting an update.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
And fix that speaker issue, so we should be good for the rest of this little talk here.
Nice.
Do you have any time restraints? What's your time look like today?
Man, I'm here for you, so whatever you need.
All right, and I'm here for you, help to promote your racing career. And it sounds like you don't need my promotion anyway, but I'll try to give it to you. You're already in World Superbike. That's freaking awesome, man. Tell me about your experience with World Superbike so far.
Oh man, it was a great experience. It's something I'm very thankful. And when I heard about the opportunity through the grapevine, it was something that I really wanted to do, but I wasn't sure if I could ever actually make it happen. And about a week went by of lots of thinking and trying to determine if it was a good idea. And then finally push comes to shove, and actually got a piece of advice from a fortune cookie. And as soon as I saw that, I knew, like, okay, like I have to do this now. Like there's no backing out. And we went for it, and it was a great opportunity, great experience. Definitely diving into the deep end. I think when I first got to the Czech Republic, which was my first race with TPR.
Was that most?
Yes, yeah. That track is very interesting. I think it was a great first track as far as the first time on the bike and getting used to everything, because it was so technical, and it wasn't necessarily about having the best bike, but having the most confidence, which for me was a great learning experience because it helped me gain confidence pretty quick. Obviously, I was nowhere near like Toprak or anybody, but I qualified, and that for me was like a nail on my freaking bucket list as far as like I'm good to go. And then we had Navarra, which as soon as I got to the track for the second race weekend on that bike, I immediately felt a lot better. Just knowing what to expect and knowing how we're going to react, how the team works, and just how everything kind of flows together in that championship. And pretty much right off the bat, we were way more competitive than we were at most. And throughout the weekend, we just slowly, built up. And it was kind of crazy when we got to race time on Saturday for our first race. The temperature spiked. I mean, it was like, I think it got to like 36, 37 degrees Celsius, which is what, like 90s, high 90s in Fahrenheit.
100, yeah.
Yeah. So the heat, as far as physically, was not crazy, but with the tires that we had that weekend, the selection that we could use from Pirelli were all super soft. So the tires were just melting, and that ended up catching me out in that first race where I was catching up to a pack that I wanted to be in, and I've been trying to be on the whole time. And just before I got up to them, I ended up pushing the front a bit too hard, and it washed out from under me at like 5 miles an hour.
So what I understand is that you haven't been to any of these tracks either. So these are all brand new tracks to you, right?
Yeah. I mean, I got a bit lucky because those two tracks in particular had not been on the World Championship calendar for more than, I don't know, maybe a month in advance. They were both kind of thrown into there. So everybody was in a bit of the same spot as far as like pretty much no testing, trying to learn things on the fly. So I couldn't have picked a better 2 rounds.
That's kind of a ideal track to go to where nobody else has been there or done significant testing, like a Jerez or Catalunya.
Yeah, exactly.
And how much different is that ADR bike to the World Superbike?
Oh man, to be honest, it's hard for me to make a comparison just because I think the direction of where the governing bodies want the motorcycles to be is they're both very different for Moto America and World Superbike. Granted, they're both FIM sanctioned, but I feel like in Moto America, because of the tracks that we have here in the States, they're much more aimed towards, like peak horsepower and how fast can you get the bike off the edge of the tire and going in a straight line. And then it seemed like when I was over on the TPR bike on the Kawasaki, it was, yes, I mean, there's definitely like you have long straightaways and you want to get the bike off the edge of the tire. That's all more or less the same, but everything was much more based towards like mid corner speed and flowing through the track and trying to not slow down as much as you feel you need to and carrying that momentum. They honestly was a lot more like riding a prototype bike, like riding a Moto 3 or Moto 2. Very, very similar mindset. Like I said, it's nothing that's like, oh, Moto America and World Superbike, the machines are, one's on the moon and one's on the sun. They do have similarities. It's just they're built in a very different mindset, I guess is the best way to put it.
So I guess what kind of approach do you take into coming into World Superbike? What kind of changes do you make to your riding style or approach to your riding?
Oh man, as far as the riding style, I would say that I had to get, well, like we talked about earlier, I just had to kind of revert back to the prototype riding style as far as not slowing down as much as I thought I had to in the fast corners, and then making sure, especially in the short braking zones, like I maximize the brakes as much as I can. So one thing I found myself doing is I would get on the brakes hard, and then pretty much as soon as I reached the peak brake pressure, I would start trailing off immediately, which is not really a bad thing, but from what I was told and what I was taught to ride their TPR bike specifically, they're like, nah, on these Kawasaki's, you have to get to that peak pressure and hold it there for a while. And that took quite some time for me to kind of retrain my brain how to ride.
So
That was
don't
probably
just
the
get the
hardest
hard,
thing.
don't just get on the brakes and then immediately trail. You gotta get on the brakes, hold it for a couple seconds maybe, and then start to trail. Is that right?
Exactly. That's why you see like Top Rack, especially, and Garrett, they do those gnarly stoppies. And it's just because they get to that peak brake pressure and then they just hold it there. And yeah, like I said, for me, it took a while to learn, but as far as the equipment, I think that was one thing that took me a while as well, is just gaining the confidence and trusting that, I can actually put that much weight on the front end and it's not just going to give out from under me and tuck or do some crazy, wild movement. It was actually very predictable. And that was just, it just took a while to gain that confidence.
It'll stick as long as it's in that, what, 20, 30-degree lean angle window?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you can get away with almost anything when you're straight up and down. And even with that, the soft Pirellis that we'd use in the front, you could, almost get your knee on the ground having like 90% brake pressure and you'd be
Wow.
okay. But it seemed like, especially when I was following riders like Alex Lowe's is a perfect example. It seems like every time I got behind him, he crashed, which I kind of felt bad for. But he was really, really good at threading the needle as far as being able to lean the bike over really far with a lot of brake pressure. Granted, it's a lot of risk, and I think that's why he had such a hard time on the front end on that bike on the Kawasaki this year. But he just had an incredible feel, and he was able to get away with it most of the time.
Sounds like there's a lot of time to be made up in the danger zones, like getting on the gas or getting off the brakes, in trail braking or just applying the throttle. Obviously, those are the biggest 2 points to make up time, but those are the most risky points to improve on, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, especially, Moto America, any professional championship, any championship really, once you get closer to the top, it's not like you have one bike or one rider that's miles ahead of the other ones most of the time. Everybody's so close as far as you're all doing more or less the same thing. It's just who can get the very, very most out of those high risk areas. And it seemed like for me, that was just a leap of faith that I didn't really want to dive too far into, especially just being a wild card rider and not wanting to destroy equipment. But man, if you had no worries and no financial restraints and could just ride, it would be incredible to see what you could do.
Just be a full factory rider and be able to throw away the bike 3 times a weekend type of thing.
Yeah.
See, us
Yeah.
privateers can't just throw away a bike anytime. We got to
Yeah.
be humble and be smart with our finances too. So you want to push, and like there's another tenth or two in that corner, but I don't know how far I can push it without losing it.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's always a risk reward benefit ratio. But so tell me about what's your plans for this coming season.
Honestly, this coming season up in 22, it's a bit hard for me to say what's going on at this time. It feels to me that doors are opening that I did not think would be possible as far as options of going back to Europe. And then there are also options of staying here in the US. And it's difficult for me to say which way that I am leaning towards, but I will say that I would like to be on a motorcycle of any kind next year. And I'm tired of running around towards the tail end of the front pack. I want to be up towards that, up towards the podium, and we'll see what happens. Honestly, it's like I said, it's a bit hard for me to say where I'm leaning, but I just want to make sure that if we're riding, that we're going to be winning.
Sure, absolutely. It's demoralizing for people who have been winning for years to now move up a class and be like dead last. But you're still going faster than you ever went on a lower spec machinery, so you're always learning and growing. I'd love to see you in that superbike class, but do you think a step down to the 1000 or maybe the brand new 600 class might be a new fresh start?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I also would love to be in the superbike class. That's from my personal standpoint, as far as it's like the best of the best. It's the peak of our AMA/FIM, racing. It's the best that we have in America.
Best people,
And
best machinery, best teams,
yes, yeah, the whole meal deal. And
most
it's been a great
coverage.
experience. Yeah, for sure. It's been a great experience riding in the superbike class for the last 2 years, more or less. But I'm realizing that for me to make the jump that I want to, as far as being up closer to that front pack, it's not something that I necessarily can afford to do, as far as the price difference between the machinery and getting, especially the transport costs, just getting to the racetracks and everything with all the equipment needed. I mean, it goes from being a $300,000 effort to $1 million effort. So that's just what it takes to go from 8th place to the podium, and there's no way
Sure.
around it. And if it's something that you're willing to do, then more power to you. And I'm trying my best to make that happen, but I'm also trying to keep realistic expectations and not bankrupt myself. So time will tell. I have seen and I've been a part of some of the growth in both the stock 1000 class and the new Super Sport 600 class. And it's actually very exciting to see everything coming together. I think the stock 1000 class last year did a really good job as far as promoting new riders, so to say, and actually showing what almost stock equipment can do. So for me as a rider, I would love to hop in the stock 1000, just because I think it's more bare bones, and that's the way I want to ride. I love the 600 class just because I think 600s are awesome. And I think it'd be cool to race against Heron in a more competitive environment. And yeah, I don't know. It's like I said, it's hard for me to say where we're going to end up, but time will tell.
Yeah, the 1000 seems like a great feeding or breeding ground for talent, and competing in the Superbike Cup is really cool because you get to see the 1000s compete with the Superbikes. Do you know if you have to compete in the stock 1000 if you want to compete in the Superbike Cup so you can be mixed in with the Superbikes?
I believe so. As far as I understand, you can be in stock 1000 and you don't have to race in the Superbike Cup, but the option is there. But I don't believe you can just race the Superbike Cup.
So then you get two a weekend at least.
Correct. Yeah. I'm not 100% on that, but that's just what I've heard.
Yeah, it's always it feels satisfying to be ahead of a bike that's lower or higher CC than your bike. If you're in a stock 1000, you could probably finish ahead of a handful of super bikes.
Mm-hmm.
At least.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I mean, I found myself fighting with the stock 1000 guys all the time this year in 2021. So great riders, and it's cool to see what the sort of stock equipment can do against, like you said, the super bike.
And I love how they're branching out. Motor America is branching out into other classes like the baggers and the twins. I think that's awesome. And I just talked to Keegan Brown again on here for his second time on here, and he went over to Italy to race scooters. And that's awesome too. I mean, I just love all kinds of racing. I think they should be racing scooters and mopeds and like all kinds of bikes.
Yeah, that is pretty cool.
Maybe not in Moto America weekend. There's not enough time, but you have to do a separate series for like scooter racing. I don't know if there's a U.S. scooter racing series.
That would be. I would drive 100 miles just to watch people ride scooters. That'd be awesome.
Because I mean, when I started racing out or riding in the street back in 2008, my dad had I think it was '06 Kymco People 250, and that thing
Hmm.
went 87 miles an hour. I mean, that wasn't slow.
No, that's
It's
fast.
a CVT. It didn't have a stabilizer, so it shook like hell when it went pretty fast. But very very unstable feeling. But that's what I learned on, and I think it'd be a cheap racing aspect or cheap way to get into it for people.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, have you heard much about the North America Talent Cup deal they're bringing out this year or
Yeah,
next year?
are you talking about the Ovales?
That and the Aprilia 660s.
So tell me about the 660s.
So I, granted, I don't know a whole lot about it, but I know that FIM is trying to introduce it might not be called the North American Talent Cup. That's just what I remember for whatever reason. Anyway, Aprilia is bringing over their RS 660 and they're putting together a championship that is, it's all spec. It's kind of like the Ovale deal as far as it's just the next CC up, so to say. So instead of it being on the 160s on the pocket bikes, so to say, it's on the 660s. And I think it's a great opportunity for people to get on a slightly bigger machine to make that step either towards, Twins Cup or Super Sport 600, whatever it might be. But great way to see the tracks, great way to get some close competition as far as really getting that aggression built into racers at a younger age. And I think it's actually pretty cool. I'm really excited to watch it and see how it progresses.
Yeah, I hadn't heard of that one. I like the idea of a 600 class bike rather than the lower class. I mean, in addition to the lower class,
Mm-hmm.
because for me, I never rode the 125s or 250s on the racetrack.
Mm,
I started at the track with the 600, so it's like, well, although I'm too old now, but I could never do those cups because it was always a different, a lower CC bike that I wasn't used to, which would take some getting used to. Your lines are different.
yeah.
Everything's a little different, even though it's a slower bike. Takes some
Mhm.
getting used to, for
Yeah, for
sure.
sure. I mean, I think it's a great opportunity for people young and old, and yeah, I'm just excited to see how it progresses.
Is there an age limit on the 600 class?
On the Super Sport 600 class,
Or no,
oh,
the talent Asian the talent cup you were mentioning, North American Talent Cup? Because I'm pretty sure the lightweight class is much younger. It's maybe 18 or something like that.
for honestly, I can't answer that because I don't know. I'm not sure of the answer. I haven't heard that much about it,
Yeah.
but I imagine it's gonna have a. I imagine there will be an age cap of some sort because you don't want somebody from Superbike hopping down into that class.
Yeah. There
But
has to be
I'm not
some
sure.
clause where if you have superbike license, you can't compete in like super stock or like, super sport.
That's been a huge, I don't want to say controversy. It's been a big talking point over the last 2 years, especially. And I don't want to say too much about it because I don't want to get into it and start this huge debate that I'm not well informed enough to know. But that's something that I have a bit of a problem with, and that's something I'm trying to avoid doing. But time will tell.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, I guess, because for all sorts of reasons, you could be in the superbike class and there's just not funding. So maybe you
Yeah.
come down to the 600 class, and that's not saying you couldn't make it there. It's just financial reasons. There could be 1,000 reasons why not. So, or maybe you just want to be on a 600.
Yeah.
Who knows? But I do have a problem with one time I got screwed out of a national podium at the Grand National Finals because the guy in front of me had a professional license, and it was my first year racing, competing in
Yeah.
novice, and he was racing in novice, and I went off the track trying to catch him down, run him down, and third place got by me. So, I was at the end. I finished, I think it was second place, and the guy in first place got disqualified. So I would have won the race, had I stayed in that position. So it's like, dang,
Yeah.
if race control caught that beforehand, that situation would have never happened. But that's sometimes how it goes.
Yeah. That's, oh, like you said, there's a million reasons why somebody could step down or somebody could go up. I mean, it's hard to say what the reason could be, but I'm trying to avoid. I think it's unfair, like when you get people, for example, what you just said. I mean, if you get somebody that's winning a national championship, whether it's super sport, super stock, super bike, whatever. And then they hop down to a club race and they, enter a novice class. I think that's kind of not okay in my
It's
book.
like sandbagging, right?
Yeah, but I've been talking to a lot of people about this at my local championship, the AFM series over here, and there's people that say it raises the level of the championship, and then there's people that say it's not fair at all. So it's hard for me to choose a side, and I can see the logic in both. So there's always a million reasons, like you
I
said.
mean, for an amateur racer, and pro guys coming into that as an expert, if you're in the expert class, come on all day, because that's a top class, and I think it does raise the level. I raced with James Rispoli one time, and I mean, I wasn't really racing with him, but I was on the same track as him, and it's cool to see where I could be on the same machinery or very similar. That on this spec, you should be doing these lap times, or this is possible at least, and it's really cool to see that. I think my best finish with a pro racer like that was 6th place, and it's like, man, well, I could have gotten higher if he wasn't here, but this is reality. This isn't like you're trying to fluff it up and make your stats look bigger. This is like, this guy wants to race. Now you got to race with him. You're an expert too. Unless you want to step down to novice, make your decision.
Yeah. Well, I can definitely see that's fair. That's a good point.
Yeah. So I like it. I welcome it. Sometimes you're not going to finish as well, but you know what? Better step it up. This is racing.
Yeah, fair enough.
So I imagine you've been doing a lot of training, fitness wise.
Definitely. This time of year right now for me, the fire department is very, very busy. Not necessarily with, major forest fires or anything like that, but just with so much physical training, trying to prep for next year's fire season. And it's great. Northern California right now, we're getting a fair amount of rain, so that's awesome. We're all super thankful for that. But we all know that when there's a lot of rain, there's going to be a decent dry spell as well. So trying to prepare as much as we can and trying to stay A, healthy, B, uninjured, and trying to keep some of the weight down. That's the biggest 3 things that I'm focusing on right now. And yeah, as far as my fitness goes, I feel better than I ever have. And I'm thankful because I've had, since mid-September to kind of recover from some injuries that I was working on last year. And yeah, I'm excited to get back on a race bike and see what we can do.
And is there anything you do actively for injury prevention, or how do you, as a superbike racer, try to not be injured?
Ooh, actually, I get a lot of flack from this from my girlfriend, but I try to reduce risk as far as if I know that I'm going to go testing, or if I know I have an event, whether it's for a motorcycle racing or not, that is important that I cannot miss, I will just avoid doing things that add excess risk to my life for like the previous 3 weeks to that set appointment or whatever it might be. So for example, like I love the off season because I love motocross. And for me, the off season is like every weekend, if I can, I'm on my motocross bike. And it's great training. It's great fun. It's just something I love doing. But as soon as it gets to like January, like I won't ride motocross from January until November, just because I get so nervous about adding that extra risk. Even though it is great training, I try and find it in other ways. Or like skiing. I love skiing. All my family loves skiing, but if it's at all close to race time, like that's it. I'm not going anywhere or doing anything.
Sure.
So I get flack for that, but I try and do that out of, avoiding injuries if I can. And then mostly for me, I like running. I love cardio, whatever I can do to get my heart rate up to actually get some decent training in. I try to do. With the fire department, I find that very, very critical. Trying to not suck down a bunch of oxygen when you're in a fire is a big deal.
Yeah, of
So
course.
that's a huge motivating factor for me. And there's a couple tools I use, like the massage guns and then my beamer device to try and keep things oxygenated blood flowing through my body is a big deal. And just trying to eat healthy and go from there.
It's funny you say that about skiing. I think Bobby Fong was on here and he said the exact same thing. He doesn't go snowboarding or skiing as much anymore. Some people are like, let's still go skydiving, let's do everything. But if you're a superbike racer looking for titles, trying to win a national title, it's at all costs, right? So you got to sacrifice sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. And I think when you do anything, whether it's racing or whatever it might be, and you start getting good and you start having expectations put upon you to perform, you definitely get that added pressure of, okay, I really like doing this one thing, but if it's going to possibly injure me or possibly hinder my performance and what I'm being expected to do, suddenly your opinions on how much you like to do that thing change.
For sure. Do you have a dedicated trainer who's helping you with all this, or do you have like a set schedule? You're doing like today I'm doing running, tomorrow's yoga, the next day's biking.
For me, I try and keep it fluid as far as I do have somewhat of a schedule as far as this is what I would like to do at this time on this day. But for me, it's a bit hard for me to set aside that concrete time of like between 10 and noon. Um, Things happen, whether it's with my fire department or whether it's with my normal weekly job. I can't always get to what I want to throughout the day. So I try and allot 2 hours every day for training, whether it's I'm going to go for a run, whether it's I'm going to go lift weights, whatever it can be, whatever I have that time for, that's what I'm going to do. As far as having a personal trainer, I don't have anybody right now that I seek out daily for advice, whether it's medical or physical or for training. I was lucky enough to get with some really good people back in 2017, and whenever I need things, whenever I have questions, I'll definitely hit them up. But it's not like I'm calling them every day.
Sure.
I've been lucky enough, and I've done this for long enough that I've kind of built a routine that works for me and my body. So I try and stick to that, and I haven't had any problems with it.
Are you trying to hit certain numbers with mileage, or just trying to get a good workout in, not really caring about how far you go, type of thing?
For me, I find myself I get into a bit of a routine, and then once I notice that I end up doing the same thing, I'll try and change it up.
Yeah.
So whether it's I run a lot of stairs and a lot of inclines and declines. That's like
Okay.
99% of the terrain I have around me. So I'll find myself, I'll do like 2 miles of stairs and then only 1 mile of actual running, so to say. So every once in a while, I'll try and change it up as far as like I'll do it the opposite, or I'll just do a 5 or a 10K just to see how that feels and if I need to change anything. And then I'll kind of gauge it from there. But normally in a good month, I'll probably get around between like 75 and 90 miles of running in a good
Okay.
month.
That's a
That's
lot.
not every month. It's
Yeah.
it's a lot for me.
Yeah.
I've found that, in the past I've tried doing a bunch of miles and then I've tried doing barely any. And it seems like in between that range is where I need to be for racing. It might not be enough, it might be too much, but that's where the bike that I was riding last year with what I needed to do with my body was like the perfect combo.
I've noticed in myself, I haven't been running as much in the last couple of months, and my ankles feel weaker. I've been doing yoga for the last couple of years, every week or at least once a week,
Hmm.
and my ankles are not as good for the standing poses and for the balance work. So just today, I went to the gym and ran 2 miles, and then I've been looking for a sauna actually, and I
Hmm.
haven't been going to this LA Fitness gym that I go to very often. I just walking through the different places. They have a sauna, so I don't need a different gym. It's like perfect.
Nice.
I didn't even know that. So
There you
I'll
go.
be going there a lot more often. I think it's like 180 degrees in the sauna, but one of the guys was
Ooh.
complaining it wasn't at full temperature, but it was pretty warm. So I just did 10 minutes in there and I headed home. But yeah, I love sauna work, hot yoga, cycling. This is actually, I'm a little embarrassed to say, I only did about 400 or 500 miles of cycling and running this year. My standard is usually 1,000 miles, so I'm slacking,
No,
um,
that's pretty solid, man. Props to you.
but I've been doing more yoga. I just switched up my plan from 5 a month to 2 a week, so
Nice.
couple more. So
Yeah, good for you.
trying to stay fit and active, and hopefully I'll be doing some supermoto next year. Riding
Hmm.
some like a 150, 250, and a 450 Husqvarna. So
Nice.
I love how they have the Husqvarna 450. The initials are FS. I think it
Yep.
stands for full send, right?
Oh, yeah, those bikes are a great time. They're a lot of fun.
Yeah. Um, so you don't want to ride motocross a lot for the danger. Would it be safer to do more of flat track or supermoto?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, I love both flat track and supermoto. I think they're awesome forms of training. I think for road racing, I would say being a decent flat track rider for road racing is pretty much an essential skill. Granted, supermoto definitely has a lot of close ties. It probably is more, probably shares more similarities with road racing than flat track does, but especially as you really start pushing a bike to the limit, understanding how a bike will move around and what will initiate this and what will help prevent the bike from going like lock to lock, sideways, is a big deal. And that's something that I try to not preach, but whenever people ask me for help in their riding, it's definitely something that I'll try and get them into, is even if it's just on like a TTR 100, whatever it might be, just getting that feeling, that sense of bike control is super important.
I can only imagine, just trying to tuck the front and then saving it and then like, using your foot to keep it up. But just then I saw this guy on Instagram the other day. I reposted it. I forget who it was, but he was going into a slide, completely tucked the front, and he's still up because his foot is, keeping him up. And then he's slowing down, does a full pirouette, and then takes off. I'm like, that's awesome. I want to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty crazy what you can do with some of the flat track bikes out there nowadays, and it's cool to watch people that really know what they're doing on flat track bikes, because it's just incredible to see what they can do with bikes.
It's pretty impressive watching the show for sure. Do you have any ambitions of maybe one day going into flat track?
Oh yeah, I mean, I haven't had much time on a true flat track bike, so to say. I've spent loads and loads of times on the TTR 125s at Super Camp. And those are always a blast. I have ridden a few of the 450s that have been properly set up, and they're also a lot of fun. I think if I really set the time aside and really put the commitment to flat track alone, it'd be really cool to see where we could end up. But right now, I think I have more fun watching it and learning about it than I do really racing like hard on them. And I don't want to get rid of that fun factor, trying to chase a financial future in it. But it is really cool to see them go.
Heck yeah. And they have a pretty cool schedule. I mean, they do like the TTs, they do the half miles, the quarter miles, or was it 8 miles even?
Yep.
So bit of variety there.
Yeah.
For the road racing, is there any features you'd like to see added to some of the road racing courses, whether it's like, I don't know, how they have joker laps in different series, like the rally cars? What if they had like a mandatory wheelie section, or if you didn't do a wheelie, you had to go through like a long lap or something?
Oh, that would be, as a spectator, man, that'd be so cool. I will tell you that being able to turn off wheelie control while you're riding on most bikes is pretty much impossible, but it would be super cool. Yeah, I could definitely see something like that coming into play as far as a joker lane, like you were saying. Whether it's, I'm not sure how it'd be initiated. I think that'd be something that could be interesting to figure out, as far as like, if you're the fastest rider for X amount of laps, you have to take this, specific lane or whatever it might be. I know this year in Moto America, at least, they switched it up with the whole grid positioning, where if you're in the top 9 in the first race, then I think if you're in the top 9 in the first race, for me, if I did not finish in the top 9, I could move up a spot. So, I mean, there are other things that were in play, but I think stuff like that's really cool. I mean, granted, it might be a bit more annoying to the people that are getting shuffled around as far as being in the top and then having to start back in the pack. But for viewing and maybe not being that up guy, maybe not being that top guy, it's really cool to get a different experience as far as being at the front or being closer to the front, and then trying to see how far you can go without getting passed.
Oh, for sure. Or maybe even, I think it'd be awesome to do complete reverse grids. It's hard to enforce or make people go hard in qualifying if you know the result is a reverse grid, right? So you'd have to make it the result from a race probably.
Yep.
And then,
but I do like that idea. I think that'd be really cool.
Reverse grids, I did that one time in a karting race, and that's hard, but it makes it more, I don't know about more enjoyable, but just a different enjoyment level because you get to pass everybody. If you're starting from the back of the grid, you're like, oh man, I wonder if I can actually do this. I don't know.
Yeah, I will. It definitely pumps up the adrenaline. Like when you're having to make these split-second decisions and you got to get to the front, your mind is in such a state of like, it's actually pretty enjoyable.
For sure. And one of those crazy moments was I don't know if you watched the Formula One finale this year, but that was kind of crazy.
Yeah, I didn't end up watching the whole race, but I definitely saw the highlights, and it's been an interesting year in that championship. Just in general, a lot have happened this year.
I mean, think about what happened at Spa, or what didn't happen at Spa. The race didn't even go on. They had a rain delay,
Yeah,
and then they did two laps behind a safety car and called it a race. That's
yeah.
so points were awarded for that, right?
I feel bad for teams and drivers when it gets to that point, because I mean you spend so much time and effort and money just to get to that location, and then you get two laps behind a safety car and then that's it. It's a bummer, and I definitely understand it from a safety standpoint. I mean, that always comes first. I remember feeling the sympathy for everybody there. Like, man, you're drenched, all your equipment is soaked, and now you have to leave. Great.
I think they were talking about changing the regulation to be able to race like on the Monday, the next day, instead of everybody go home and do nothing.
Yeah.
You're already here. You already
Yeah.
traveled from countries away just to be here.
Yeah. Exactly.
And so you've experienced some of this international travel. How many containers does your team alone ship?
Oh man.
I mean, it's got to be at least one or two big containers of like motorcycles and parts and spares and frames, all your
Yeah.
tools.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, most of the time, it depends a lot on the size of the team, the size and the budget of the team. So people like HRC, Honda, they have a way different shipping schedule and shipping budget than the privateer BMW team. But in general, I mean, usually one team gets one like shipping container allotment of space. So granted, it might not be, the length or the width of that exact container, but that's more or less what you get. And trying to make things fit in those very tight spaces is always interesting. I know certain teams, if they have the funding, will just have multiple setups in different countries and then they'll just leave them there. I think that's logistically the easiest way to go because it's a less hassle and it's a lot less risk. One of the problems that one of the teams that I've ridden for in the past, we've shipped bikes to Portugal and shipped all this equipment over there, and then we had 3 chassis get stuck in customs.
Ah,
And fair enough, we got through the first practice and one of the chassis was cracked.
oh
So
no.
we had to send an official, we had to get a Catalan official over to Portugal, fly him over there to discuss everything, and we finally got a chassis back at like 2 in the morning. So there's a lot of risk involved with shipping stuff across the world or even across, a couple hundred miles, depending on where you're at. But it's all part of racing. And I know they had that problem in F1 as well this year, where they had all this stuff get stuck and you're like, well, what are you going to do? There's nothing you can do besides wait. So
Yeah, the COVID has caused logistical nightmares for everybody everywhere.
yeah, for sure.
And it's sometimes hard to get that. Yeah, I did read that it's cheaper for them to buy several sets of tools and then just keep them in that country rather than to ship them across all these oceans. I thought that was crazy.
Yeah, I mean, shipping costs for me to ship a motorcycle to England, almost 10 years ago was $7,000, and that was one bike in one container with nothing else.
That's crazy.
So yeah, it's pretty gnarly how quickly it adds up.
And that's, I assume, via air, not boat.
Mine was on a boat. It took about 2 months to get the bike. I think we sent it off in like late November and we got it in late January, more or less.
Oof.
Yeah. And we had to
See,
spray everything with WD-40 so it wouldn't rust.
oh, I bet all that ocean sea,
Yep.
that salt.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so you've rode some UK tracks?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I raced over in England for 2 years, and granted, there's lots of tracks over there.
How
well, over
about
in England in general.
Snetterton? Have you ever been to Snetterton? Am I saying it
Yep,
right?
Snetterton is a good track. That's a good one. Especially, I haven't ridden any of those tracks on anything besides a 125 or a Moto 3. That's all I rode when I was over there. But they are awesome. I think my favorite track over there, Cadwell Park, is just a statement. I mean, if you
That
go to
jump.
England, yeah, you gotta ride Cadwell. It is scary. There, like, you have the jump, and then the section directly after it is literally like 6 feet wide.
Yeah.
So you got to
Pretty
be
tight.
on point. Yeah, but it is a really cool track. That and ooh, Thruxton. Thruxton
Buxton.
is on a Moto 3, you were wide open for 56 seconds
Woo.
per lap. You spent so much time just pinned in six. It was so much fun.
That's nuts. I've been trying to complete Snetterton on the Assetto Corsa Competizione simulator racing game I got upstairs.
Nice.
It's a new track for me, and it's, they got that long straightaway with that really tight chicane. I keep screwing that up, trying to go in too hot.
I
And then
think
there's
turn one
that.
has always freaked me out.
There's a long straightaway within that right turn,
Yep.
or coming onto the main straight. You got that long right hander, and then the tight left.
Yep.
It's
Oh
tricky.
yeah. It is really tricky. I mean, I've seen some big crashes in those last two corners.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's easy to get it wadded up because you're so committed, and it's like so one line, I guess, through that corner.
hmm
I mean, you can screw it up real easy.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, like you said, that last left going onto the straightaway, you have so much speed on a Moto 3 again. So much speed coming through that right hander. I mean, you're in fourth gear at like 75% throttle, and then you're clicking down to first to make that left. So you get people coming in a little bit hot, and then maybe they're trying to put a pass on the inside, and it's so easy just to lose that front, and then you're taking out, four people.
Yeah.
So,
I just talked to Jack Roach again on here, and he was saying he's going actually to BSB next year, 2022. He'll be in the 400 class BSB,
oh
and
yeah.
they don't go to Cadwell Park. The lightweight class doesn't go there anymore.
Oh, that's a bummer.
So I don't know if it's because of the jump, because it's a little too dangerous, maybe for the young kids, or if they don't have enough paddock space. But
Mm,
I guess they won't be doing that round.
that's a bummer.
So, but anything on your mind today? What do you want to talk about? What's on your agenda today?
Oh man, today has been a lot of work in the morning, and then a lot of logistical nightmares going on in the afternoon. But as far as racing is concerned, I mean, the biggest thing that I try to preach to up and coming riders or racers or whoever is looking to excel in this specific industry in general, um, is to be patient. I mean, that's one thing that I look back now and I wish I could tell myself that, it's okay. You don't have to be in such a crazy rush to make the European jump or to get on 1,000 cc motorcycle or whatever it might be. I mean, I'm at a point now where I've had some pretty wicked injuries and I've had some pretty wicked crashes, and most of them were from stupid mistakes that I made because I just didn't know any better. And I feel if I could be in the position that I am now, when I was racing Moto 2s, my life would be in a different spot. And that's something I look back every day and I think about, but that's life, and I'm trying to make the most of what I have now. And whenever I see kids coming up, whether they're 13, 14, and they're like, oh, I got to be to Europe racing in the junior world championship by the time I'm 15. I'm like, yeah, that's a great goal, and it's definitely something that you should set your heart out to do and achieve. But you also have to realize that most of the kids, especially being an American, when you make that jump, they have been riding those tracks their entire lives. They've ridden those types of motorcycles their entire lives. The odds are tenfold stacked against you. So taking the time to really perfect everything that you possibly can to be the best rider that you can and to understand how to set up a motorcycle, I guess, is the biggest thing that I was always told, is knowing what you need and what the bike is actually capable of. Those are like the key points that will help you go far in a career and help stay uninjured. So I guess that's the one thing I try and tell people, and it's something that I feel up and coming riders should understand and should know. And yeah, just enjoy it while you got it and make the most of it.
For sure. It sounds like good advice coming from someone in the conversation of names like Sean Dillon Kelly, you know, Joe Roberts, Cameron Bobier, Jayson Uribe, you know, Kenny Noyes. He was over there for overseas CEV for a while.
Oh yeah.
You know, you're one of the handful of guys who's done well overseas and made the jump so far. So it's cool to get your perspective.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's been an opportunity of a lifetime, and I'm very thankful that I made the jump and that I had the backing to make the jump. I wouldn't change it for the world, and you know, here we are today, still racing, so can't complain.
You gonna stick with the Cowies? What's your plan for a manufacturer, you think?
What I would love to say is that I'm going to be on a factory Honda next year in the Superbike class.
All right.
Is that going to be a reality? Highly unlikely. We will see what happens. Right now, it looks like things are going to work out for Kawasaki as far as what I'm going to end up being on. I don't know what CC, but nothing is signed right now. So it's all kind of up in the air, but right now it is leaning towards Kawasaki.
It is a silly season, right? Everybody's moving around, changing teams, changing plans.
Yep, exactly.
And is there anybody you got your eye on, up and coming racers, whether the junior class or fellow competitors or rivals? Somebody got to watch out for.
It's hard for me to not root for Sean. I think Sean's a great kid, a great person, I should say. Great guy, and I'm really excited to see how he stacks up in Moto2 this year. I love Cam. Cam has been my idol since I was 4 years old. I would love to see them both really dominate next year. And as far as in America, it's hard for me to say. I'm not super in tune with everything that's happening with the junior classes, so to say. I would say Corey Ventura is one that I've watched grow from literally 50s, and now he's on 600s, and he got on the podium at Laguna. So
that's pretty good.
I'd like to see him do well and see where he ends up, and go from there.
For sure. I was just looking at the message that we had done together with scheduling this appointment or this podcast, and you had said one of the things you wanted to talk about was motorsports jobs in the industry. And I got a lot to say about that, actually. I've created my own business in the motorsports industry, so anybody can do that. I'm selling race parts online. One of the newest brands I'm uploading is Revit. I mean, they're used in MotoGP, World Superbike, pretty much everywhere. Local track day company. So a lot of different parts. I have 34 brands now of different parts from motorsports, cars, and mountain bike. I just got an O'Neill helmet and Blur Optics goggles for myself. So I'm excited to test those out at Supermoto.
Oh yeah.
But it sounds like you are a coach as well. Is that true? Are you coaching other riders on their racecraft and riding?
Yeah. I don't do the coaching side to make money. I wouldn't say that's like a great business model, but I do it because it's something that I'm very passionate about, and I'm lucky enough that I've had almost 20 years of experience doing. So being able to help somebody progress and being able to see how my actions have, I would like to say, improved a person's riding is super satisfying. But aside from the coaching stuff, I mean, like you said, I mean, there's so many opportunities on how you can make a career and make a living in the racing industry, whether it's 2 wheels or 4 wheels. There's always going to be something out there that people either need or that people want. So for me, I mean, finding that niche as far as meeting the right people and getting into major industries, major tech companies, it's kind of hard for me to say because I'm under a few NDAs right now, but I will say that I spend very little time at home nowadays because I spend so much time on a motorcycle driving head on towards other vehicles, because certain people are developing certain things that will help avoid getting into motorcycle accidents in the future.
That's awesome. That sounds like
And
it could save a lot of lives.
that's what we're trying to do. And it's stuff like that. I mean, there's always a need for people with experience and people that really know exactly how to ride a motorcycle or drive a car. I mean, there's always something out there, and as long as you're actually willing to put in the thought and put in the work to make that opportunity happen, then you're going to be good to go.
I just learned about an opportunity for myself and other motorcycle racers. If you're interested, Motorcycle Safety Foundation needs instructors.
Oh
And
yeah.
so I found out they paid pretty well. And it might
Mhm.
be weekends here or there or certain dates. It's not like every day you have work, but
Mhm.
with my job, with my schedule, with my business, I can be kind of flexible. So I
Mhm.
think I'm going to become a MSF instructor this year.
Yeah.
Road America was the first person who asked for instructors. I was a track marshal this year at Road America. So that's
Nice.
how I found out about it. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm sure there's a need for Michigan and Ohio, Pennsylvania, like all around me. So I should be reaching out to these people. And I'm already on the list for the webinar for the next training session coming up. So
Oh yeah. Good for
I'm
you.
excited for it. And I
Yeah,
mean,
that's awesome.
for any racer, I mean, doing a MSF class for basic riders seems like a no-brainer. I mean, it's basic information, but like it's information that's easy for me to talk about, and it's
Mhm.
easy to teach, I think. So it'd be great to be in that environment. You could do the advanced rider courses, basic rider course. I'm sure there's others as well. So that's another avenue of making money.
Yeah.
I mentioned the coaching initially because somebody reached out to me looking for coaching. I'm not
Hmm.
yet really a coach, although I could be. I could have been years ago, but I always wanted to focus on my own writing.
Yeah.
So I think that's definitely an avenue I can explore, is learning how to coach people. Or this guy wanted me to critique his race video and maybe his
Mhm.
lines, gearing position if he's hitting the rev limiter, help him out with that. Or
Yeah.
I think it's another avenue making money for sure. Maybe not the best business model, but it's something that's cool to help out with.
Yeah. No, for sure. There's something for me personally, there's nothing better than, like you said, looking at even if it's a video, looking at a GoPro video of somebody going around a track, and it might be something as small as like, okay, well, instead of getting on the brakes after you make your direction change, try getting on the brakes before you make your direction change. Stuff like that. I mean, it might be so small, but it makes such a big difference to them as a person, as a writer, and you come back and there's just this big old smile. There's you can't beat it.
Yeah, for sure. It's very rewarding, and I just can't wait to do more of it.
Yeah, for sure.
And so this year I'm actually, expanding my track marshaling. Last year I did 8 events. I
Oh wow.
did Daytona. I did Barber for the Moto America, and I did Barber for the Grand National Finals for WERA.
Hmm.
Daytona was a race of champions for CCS. I did Road America, Moto America. I did Pittsburgh, Moto America. I did Grattan for WERA, Blackhawk Farms for CCS, and Mid Ohio for WERA. So a little bit
Nice.
all over the place, 8 states, or 7 states, 8 events, I think. And this year they told me that all 3 organizations wanted me back at every event. So I'm like,
Nice.
well, that's like a full-time 40
Yeah.
weekends a year type of job. So
Hmm.
I don't know exactly what's going to play out, but I'd love to do the full Moto America calendar, working it. I'd love to be riding, but that's not in the cards this year. And maybe some CCS and WERA thrown in. And actually, in probably less than 2 weeks, I'll be flying out to Daytona again, doing ARMA. So vintage bikes, American Historical Racing Motor Association.
Nice.
Um, so I'll be going out there to do the vintage bikes. I haven't done that one yet, so it'll be my first time out there doing vintage bikes. But it's pretty much the same thing, just maybe a little slower and a little bit more smoky.
Oh, that's awesome. Good for you.
And man, I've been thinking, what if I could add like 10 organizations to my race resume or track marshaling? I mean, there's like, I applied to be a Formula One track marshal from Miami this
Oh
year.
wow. Yeah.
I would love to do MotoGP Coda.
Hmm.
Um, I've been invited to do IMSA Petit Le Mans.
Nice.
Um, I can do there's an East Lansing kart track, which for be kart racing. They said they don't pay, but you can get free track time. So that'd be a
Nice.
good way to get free track time. What else was there? Well, there's Moto America, Wera, CCS, Arma. There's two more I was thinking of. SCCA doesn't pay, but it'd be cool to be put on your resume. And
Yeah.
there's one more, I think. I can't remember off the top of my head, but so there's like 10 organizations I could work for that are local to me within a couple hours or a couple states away at least. So if people are really hungry, I mean, you just got to reach out to race organizations. I actually applied to a job with the FIA. I applied to head of esports. I don't know what qualifications I have for that, but or what do you need? But head of
Yeah.
esports and then some other communications position. I'm like, I don't care what the job is. If it's racing related, let me in, you know.
Yeah.
And so I did mechanical engineering in college, but I didn't finish. I dropped out and became a motorcycle racer.
Yeah.
So
Well, there you go.
I don't have an intense engineering background. So it's not like I could be a race engineer or something like that. So, but there are other avenues that you could go. You know,
Yeah.
I have basically put a motorcycle together from scratch, from the ground up, except for building the engine and internal suspension components. And that's all you need to build a race bike to be on a
Yeah.
race team for the most part. So, I mean, I might not be the fastest guy in the world, but I could do it.
No. Hey, man, it's more about the will than being willing to put in the work when it's necessary. And that's 99% of the job in general, especially being on different teams, whether it's at a local level or at an international level. I mean, there's so many moving parts, and just having somebody that is actually going to be committed to the job and trusting the equipment that you're about to get on and potentially risk your life on is a huge part of going fast. That was a problem that we ran into multiple times in my career, as far as getting on the motorcycle and being like, okay, is this bike actually going to hold up this time? So that's never a good feeling for anybody involved. So, like you said, I mean, there's opportunities out there, and you just have to be hungry enough to go after them. And I think it's something that I wish I could see more people, more racers specifically, pursuing other avenues. But it is what it is, and more for the rest of us, I guess.
For sure. And since you've been kind of stepping up your game with the classes you're racing, how has your role in working on the bike changed?
Who, in a perfect world, you would fly into a track or fly into an airport, drive to the track, go to your hotel, show up the next morning, hop on the bike and ride. In a ideal situation, that would be like the dream job. In reality, I mean, yeah, you're flying into an airport, you're driving to the track, and you're going to the track, you're setting up the rig, you're getting the bikes and stuff ready. It's a full day of just getting the preparation going. Definitely, when I ran my own program, it was a lot more work, as far as there's so much more mental stress and just mental capacity put into just making sure everything is actually functioning the way it should be at the track. But being on a full-time race team, as far as you have that driver, you have that mechanic that will take care of the motorcycles when you're not there, you have the person that's overseeing the suspension changes, stuff like that. That definitely takes a huge load, especially off the rider. It takes so much stress off of them, and it allows them to focus more on riding the machine. Definitely the last few years, like I said, I ran my own program over 2018 through 2020, more or less. And then this year I've been with Dave, and that was a bit of a pace change, a couple things that I had to get used to, and things I had to change about my riding and the way I approach racing. All good things, nothing bad, and learned a lot. Definitely places where I feel I can improve. But that's something I'm going to work on really hard right now to fix for next year, and we'll see where it goes.
So Aussie Dave. He's a pretty unique character. He's been he's transplanted out of down under and into the States for the last 15, 20 years, I think. And he's been running a superbike team. And I think at one point he had 3 or 4 different manufacturers of motorcycle underneath his tents at one time. I've
Hmm.
never heard of that ever being done by another team owner. But he's
Yeah.
got a unique setup, so it sounds like it's working out for him.
Yeah, no, I love Dave. He's a great guy, and the crew that he has around him are also super nice people, and they all know a lot about what they do, which I, as a writer and as a person, I really appreciate. Um, as far as the multiple manufacturer ordeal, I guess. As far as I know, I think that's more of just a personal preference deal. As far as he's trying things, and if he likes them, then he'll continue to pursue that avenue. And if he gets on a bike and doesn't like the way it goes, then he'll try something else. Which a part of me, I can definitely respect that. I mean, it's kind of the whole like grass is green on the other side kind of deal. Like you never know until you try. So I respect that completely. On the other hand, if you don't really spend the time to put in the development and the work to get a bike to where you want it, I can see where that could be, on the negative side of things. But it's always going to be a balance, and I think he's done really well. I haven't, I haven't been around. I haven't known him long enough to really say much about, prior than like 5 years. Um, but in the last 5 years, I think he's done a great job with what he has, and it's been a good opportunity. I'm thankful I had the chance to work with him.
Yeah, for sure. Talk about multiple manufacturers. I've always thought it'd be really interesting to have, I don't know, some sort of track day or testing event that like all the big players come out: Ducati, Yamaha, Triumph, Honda, Kawasaki, and so on, Aprilia, and you can ride their bikes, like
Hmm.
maybe in race trim even, so you can see like, oh well, this is a Kawi, this is a Honda, and this you can feel different characteristics. Because otherwise, if you don't get to ride that bike until you sign a contract, and then you're like, well, I'm stuck with this bike now. Maybe you don't like it.
Yeah, yeah. There's always a risk. And that exact thing, when I was a kid, actually used to happen back out in Las Vegas, where you would get, Ducati, Yamaha, Aprilia, everybody, all the manufacturers would bring their bikes. And we went out to the Vegas Speedway over there, and you would do like 3 laps. And granted, it's not a lot of time, but it's enough time to know, like, okay, either I hate this bike or I love this bike. So
Yeah.
it was something I wish still happened. I was young. I was like between 5 and 8. So I never got the chance to actually experience it, but being there and just being around, it was a great opportunity, and I would definitely like to see that happen again.
That'd be pretty cool. Um, do you have any aspirations to do some endurance racing coming up?
Oh yeah, that's one of the opportunities that I'm tempted to pursue as far as endurance world championship stuff.
Ooh,
A few options there, but the biggest thing is it's such a change of pace, and that honestly really excites me. I think it's something that could be a great opportunity, and I think there's a lot more of a time commitment as a writer to riding in the EWC than there is in a junior or world championship as far as like a normal racing, so to say. Um, just because there's so much testing and there's so much development that you have to put into these machines to be able to be at the top. I mean, there's going to be development testing in every championship, but to get the TSR Honda to where it is now in the EWC has taken years and years of time from everybody involved. So I think it'd be really cool. It's something that I'm not sure if my time schedule will allow right now, but I think it's a really cool option.
and how many rounds is that EWC scheduled this year? Or is it a 2-year schedule? I think the
Ooh,
cars do it that way.
that I'm not sure. I know Suzuki won it last year, and I know Honda won it the year before that. So I don't know if it's a 2-year deal, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I think the cars they do like a 21, 22, like a tandem season, because they
Mm.
only have like a race every couple months, so spread it out. But in that racing, you make one mistake, it could ruin your whole evening.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And
It's
that's
much
that's
more
where the
risk.
whole yeah, it's a lot of risk. That's where you have to trust and know everyone, because it couldn't, like you said, I mean, it's not just you. You have to not worry about, but you have to think about yourself, the other one or two riders that you have involved, the mechanics changing the wheels, the mechanics changing the brakes. I mean, there's so many more moving parts, and it's really cool to watch when you get a well-oiled team, well-oiled machine, so to say, but a well-oiled team working together all in once, and seeing the result is so cool to watch.
It's pretty satisfying after so much effort and so much work. But something that's got to be hard as a rider, I'm sure, is how do you set up a motorcycle that's good enough to ride at race pace for three separate people who ride completely differently?
Hmm.
You know,
That's the huge challenge.
trying to get the ergonomics. Do you got to compromise here and there, and then you might not get exactly what you want, but it might be 90% of the way there.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I mean, something that we would mess around with even in like the club level endurance racing that I've done, as far as ergonomics go, I mean, you get foot pegs that are, instead of having the foot pegs that you can adjust and stuff, you get the foot pegs that are stationary, like you can't move them, and you just get different seat pads. So you have
Okay.
Velcro all over the seat, and you just slap your seat pad on, and then you go. And then the
Huh.
next person goes and takes yours off and puts theirs on. So there are little tips and tricks, but definitely it's always a compromise.
That's one way to do it. Just don't lose your seat pad and then hit someone behind you, right?
Yeah.
It's like a
Uh,
banana. Just
yeah, for sure.
um, heck yeah. So yeah, I got no other bullet points here. I'm just spitballing off the top of my head. Is there anything in the news on your mind? I don't know, I'm just trying to think of things.
Oh, that's cool, man. I mean, I appreciate everything that we've talked about. I mean, the biggest thing that I wanted to get across was the little tips and tricks that we talked about earlier, and I think I'm good. I appreciate your time.
For sure. Well, I guess I'd like to talk about something real quick. Social media and YouTube is not always about promoting the glamorous stuff. Sometimes about real life. And
Hmm.
my cat died today. He was hit by a car 100 feet outside my house, and
Oh man.
I came home from the gym, and there were two people, hovering over my cat on the road, and I was like, oh shit, that's probably my buddy, and sure enough, it was. So,
Oh,
it's
I'm sorry,
been.
man.
Yeah, thank you for that. It's 7 years, and uh, it's just weird now. Every time I look around, I'm like, oh, Ninja, I gotta watch out I don't step on him, because he's always under your feet. He's always right next to you, and it's just like, man, you don't realize how integrated in your life animals are after 7 years.
Hmm.
So sometimes it stinks, but I'm gonna miss him.
Yeah. That's rough, man. It always sucks to lose a friend like that.
Yeah. So I was just, it's a little too soon, but I was looking on like Pet Finder and seeing what's out there. I gotta grieve. I gotta wait for it. But yeah, it's strange. I never used to love cats. I never had a cat, and then
Yeah.
my girlfriend at the time, she wanted a cat. I didn't want a cat, so we compromised and got four cats. And one of those situations. So I've had this guy for a while now, and um, yeah, it's just gonna be hard without him, but I'll survive. So,
Mm.
but yeah, it's good to talk to you, man. Where can people find you on social media? Where you at?
Oh, well, the bummer is I spent 5 years building up an Instagram profile, and then well, actually, it was like a year ago now, it got hacked and totally destroyed. So
Oh
that was a
no,
bummer. Yeah, but nowadays I'm just first name, last name, Jayson 36 Uribe on Instagram. And then on Facebook, I'm still just Jayson Uribe. And I'm definitely more active on Instagram than I am Facebook, but I try and keep things up to date on both. And yeah, that's about it, man. I mean, for me personally, during the off season, I'm not hyperactive on social media like other writers are. I try and keep my life fairly private, especially things that I find personal. But I'm always trying to be active when I can. And yeah, as soon as the racing season comes around, we'll be back on it and go from there.
very good. Well, I think we talked about 49 episodes ago, so it's good to connect with you and catch up.
Yeah, same for you. I appreciate your time, and if there's ever anything you need, let me know.
For sure, man. I'll get this edited and posted, and make sure we tag everybody we talked about.
Sounds good, buddy. Thank
All right,
you.
take care.
You too. Bye.